Hello, folks. Welcome back to another sensational, educative, exalting, and informative live stream. We're still on the topic: is the Quran perfectly preserved, like Muslims assume? Yeah. So, firstly, let us just give an apology. We've made an apology community post to let you know of the rescheduling of Sister Hatun Tash session with us. So we're very sorry. She didn't mean to reschedule, but something came up which she had to kind of attend to very urgently. So and she even asked for a reschedule because we were even giving her some other options, but she was saying no, that she wants to be with us and but that we should give her a later date, which we eventually did. It shows our humility and our zeal to spread the gospel of Christ to Muslims and to equip the saints also. So, folks, we are very sorry about this. Uh, so that being said, what we're doing today will be an overview of the topic. It will just be like a kind of a summary, a paraphrase of everything. While on the 18th of April, Sister Atota will come up to do the um, summary of the subject. I mean, to do the teaching of the subject on the Topkapi manuscript of the Quran. So 18th of April, she'll be on. Okay, so stick stick to the dates. So what we were doing today is just an overview. Myself, Young Christian Thoughts, I mean, ETM Politics, and possibly Young Christian Thoughts and Race to Reason also. We'll just be doing an overview of the text today.
Are you gonna start the overview? Are you there?
The sources we'll be using for the live stream is, let me just post the link, and I'll be leaving the link also in the description by the grace of God. So after the live stream, you can also go and check it out. It's a write-up we made some times ago about the Topkapi manuscript. So we'll just be looking at this. So so that's that's the link right there, shown on the stage. So that's the link. It's a Facebook page. I mean, it's a Facebook post we made some couple of years back on the Topkapi. Uh, so so that we'll be using for this session. So a critical analysis of the earliest Quranic manuscript, which is the Topkapi manuscript. Now, firstly, I want us to understand that the Topkapi was discovered in Turkey. That is where in Istanbul in Turkey. That is where it was discovered. And when we're talking about the six earliest Quranic manuscripts, you need to understand this that um, there, there were there were no so much scholarly work being done on the six earliest Quranic manuscripts. No serious scholarly work has been done, and it would amaze you seriously. It will amaze you, folks, how they to know that majority of the work being done. When I mean work, I mean the scholarly or academical work being done on these Quranic manuscripts are being done by Christians, not Muslims. Muslims did not see the need to go study their manuscripts to understand it in depthly. They feel that the perfect preservation claim of Allah in the Quran actually is so solid that there's nothing that you want to bring up that anybody cannot stand. So therefore, you would never see them doing no serious scholarly work has ever been done. And this was even Dr. Taya Atikulish, who happens to be a scholar in Turkey also. This was the same thing they said, that no serious scholarly work has been done on the six earliest Quranic manuscripts. The first scholarly work that was done on them was in 2007 by Dr. Taya Atikulish, Dr. Francio de Roche, Dr. Ekmaledin. This, and when you, I don't know if Uji can just go to Google, type Al Mushaf Al Sharif. When you type that Al Mushaf Al Sharif, even I think there is this. I gave the picture of it in this article. You can just scroll down. Let us look at the picture, so they can see it. Scroll down. There's a picture that I attached to this article, so they can see it. Yes, scroll up. Yes. So that was the first scholarly work, the first serious scholarly work that was done on the six earliest Quran manuscripts. It is called Al Mushaf Al Sharif. So it was done by some group of Islamic scholars. Again, which was done by some group of Islamic scholars, not Christian scholars. Now these are Islamic scholars. So these are your guys, Muslim. These are your guys that did this work in, I think, from 2002 to 2007. That was when this work was being done on the six earliest Quranic manuscripts. And Dr. Tazi Kulish happens to be a scholar. I mean, a doctor who's a scholar also in Turkey. So he has access to the Topkapi manuscripts. So that this was his major focus, and so this was what this. So you can scroll down now, Uji. So let us look at what Dr. Tasklish said. So this is scholarly work. Now, when you are doing a scholarly work on a manuscript, you should know that it will be unbiased. These are unbiased conclusion or discoveries by these scholars of Islam. And so so whatever they say, it has nothing to do with religion. That the fact that they are Muslims or the fact that they are Islamic scholars does not really mean that they will be so much biased. Though we have some Islamic scholars that will be biased, but not these people. So because they know that if they are biased towards it, then when others begin to do some serious work on it, then you begin to see the lies, because you cannot lie when it comes to scholarly academia. You can't lie. When you lie, your lie will soon be exposed, and that's the reason you see that somebody like all this perfect preservation theory, you cannot bring that kind of a thing down to academia at all. They would not agree with you on that, because the Quran does not stand the test. So what does Dr. Tazikoli says? So before we look at what Dr. Atikuli says, let's look at what the Muslim says first. They said the Quran is practically preserved, word for word, dot for dot, nothing unchanged. And folks, you must understand this. If the Quran is perfectly preserved, word for word, since the time of Muhammad till date, okay, it means that every manuscript that we will be seeing about the Quran on the Quran should all be in line. They should all be consistent. We shouldn't see any inconsistency in those manuscripts. If we compare ancient manuscripts with today's manuscripts, we shouldn't see any variance in it. If the perfect preservation claims of the Quran of the Muslims would stand the test, then earliest Quranic manuscripts with today's manuscripts should be saying exactly the same thing. No discrepancies, no variation, no difference. But when you begin to see that the earlier Quranic manuscripts do not agree with today's present Quran, then how would you claim that the Quran is perfectly preserved when today's text and the earliest Quranic text are having troubles reconciling with each other? So that kind of claim. So when Muslims claim the perfect preservation text on the Quran, it's for you to claim it, then you must be ready to say, look, I'm not going to be sincere. I'm a liar. Let me put it that way. I'm not a faithful person, because the evidences we have does not actually say that these texts are actually preserved. So I think, would you just scroll up a little bit? I mean, so that I can just move past what.
Let me know
now.
Okay.
Okay, that's okay. Now look at what the leading Islamic scholar says is this. Dr. Ekmaledin Isangolu. Look, this is what he said. He said, we have none of Uthman's mushafs. Now you notice last week when 11 apologetics was live, Aladdin was saying that it was attacking 11 apologetics, saying that what was burnt was not the Quran but was the Musaf. Aladdin is just playing a language game, because Musaf is not an English language, it's an Arabic language. So which also means the Quran also. It also means manuscripts. It means manuscript. So it was saying that what was born was Musaf, not the Quran. But yet Musaf means manuscript. So what was born is Quranic manuscript. Uthman burnt the Quranic manuscript. So every Quranic manuscript, either in whole or in fragment, was burned. So Uthman burned the Quran. So he did not. He knows. Aladdin knows he was lying. So he only played the language game. And this is uncommon. This is not common. I mean, this is uncommon. You see Muslims playing this language game. Before you know it, they will tell you you don't understand the Arabic language. So they always lean to that when they are caught in the web when they are caught in the web and they were like, no, you don't understand that Arabic. Then so now this is what Dr. Ekmedin said. He said, we have none of Uthman's Mushaf, that is manuscripts, nor do we have any copies from those Mushaf, that is from those manuscripts. This Mushaf dates from the late Umayyad period. This is Professor Dr. Ekmedin saying this now. Now, it means that it says we do not have any of Uthmanic manuscripts. Now, you would notice that we Christians will often ask the question, if you would claim perfect preservation of your Quran, then the question is, bring us a Uthmanic standardized text of the Quran. Then the Muslims begin to tell you, they will tell you what to tell you. They will tell you the Topkapi, the Samarkand, the Haluzain, the Mahil, the Pataponatanus manuscripts. They begin to mention the Birmingham folio. They attribute those Qurans to Uthman, and they can, but not anymore. Because as at then, when they were saying all this, no serious scholarly work had been done on these mushafs, on these manuscripts. Do you understand? So if you are going to see any Muslim that is going to also claim this kind of a thing, that, oh, the Topkapi is an Uthmanic manuscript, the Sana manuscripts, the Al-Huzayni, the Pataponatanus, the Mahil, all those 6 earliest Quranic manuscripts, when they begin to tell you, know that that kind of Muslim is either he or she is not well informed, or he or she is only playing a mind game, because he or she knows that those manuscripts are not attributed to Uthman, but because he just wants to win the argument, then they start telling lies. Okay, so they will tell you this, that Mushraf is from Uthman, but when scholarly work was carried out on it, we discovered that these manuscripts are not in any way attributed to Uthman. It is not an Uthmanic manuscript in any way, not Uthmanic, not in any way. So if it's not Uthmanic, then the question is, how the Uthmanic manuscript is the same with the exact one you have today. If you do not have the Uthmanic manuscript in your possession today, guess what the Muslims will tell you? They will ask us, they will throw back that same question to Christians and say, provide us with the autograph of the Bible, that is the autograph of the New Testament and the autograph of the Old Testament. That where is it? So let me just focus on New Testament. Where are the autographs? That we ourselves we do not find it. I mean, we don't have it. So that then why should we ask for what we don't have for them? But there is a difference. This is a different scenario, folks. This is it. We must understand that when it comes to the Bible autograph, when I mean autograph, I mean the copy of the apostle that they wrote themselves. That means the one that Matthew himself wrote, the one that Luke himself wrote, the one that John wrote, the one that Mark wrote, the one that Peter, Paul, James, John, or what they wrote themselves. We don't have them. But the reason why we don't have them is because, well, you must understand that the church was not wealthy. The church was not wealthy. So because the church was not so wealthy when it began, the church had to make use of the cheapest source of writing at that time, which was papyrus. And papyrus was gotten from leaves. So it does not have the capacity to last long, unlike a parchment. A parchment are always gotten from animal skins, like gazelle. So, but papyrus are always gotten from leaves, and it does not last long. It disintegrates. That is, it begins to rumple. It begins to turns to when you squeeze it, it begins to turn to particles, small. So it disintegrates with time. So it does not last long. And also, you must understand that the autograph or the writings or the books of these first apostles were actually used to copy other copies. So as a result, it makes it to disintegrate even faster. So we do not have that worth, that leisure. The church did not know anything worth, not until when Constantine became the emperor. That was when we could say, okay, this. We have an emperor, or we have somebody who is a Roman. But the point here is, the church wasn't so wealthy when it began. But that cannot be said for Islam. Islam was founded on wealth. Khadijah was a wealthy merchant. It was Khadijah that actually made Muhammad a rich man. Muhammad actually he was opportune to be the, he was the one that actually took over the wealth of Khadijah. Not only that, Muhammad did a lot of fighting, conquered a lot of cities. So they had access to parchment. So, and parchment, when you have parchment, when you write things on parchment, it lasts longer for so many years, for centuries, for decades. It lasts. So that is why parchment is often better than papyrus. And this was what Islam, or this was what the Quran was written on. At least we know that the Quran of Uthman was written on parchment, because, come on, he was a caliph. And Muslim at that time controlled about 9 provinces in the whole. That is, those 9 provinces were being controlled by Islam. We have Egypt, we have Jerusalem, we have Mecca, Medina, we have lots of them. So about 9 of them. We have Iran, Iraq. So they were all being controlled by Islam at that time. So there was money, there was wealth. So they had the money to get a parchment where they can write the Uthmanic manuscripts. So this was what the Uthmanic manuscript was written on. So, and it was sent to all these 9 provinces when he finished writing it. And immediately he finished writing it. So when you study all these 9 provinces that that Uthman or Islam controlled at that time, how these 9 provinces are still very active till date. They are still under the Islamic law. They are still under the Islamic power. The only province that is no longer under Islamic is Jerusalem. The rest are still Islamic countries. At least Iran and Iraq are still Islamic country. Egypt is still an Islamic country. Mecca is still an Islamic country. So when you begin to look at all this, they are still Islamic countries. So, and when you trace the history back from the 7th century, when Uthman was said to have written or compiled or strategized the Quran, and trace it to date, you will see that there is no record of any natural disaster that occurred in any of those 9 provinces that would have caused any of these manuscripts, any of these Uthmanic manuscripts that is sent there to have been destroyed. There was no natural disaster that could have destroyed them. So, which means that we ought to be able to go to Mecca, we ought to be able to go to Egypt, we ought to be able to go to Iran and Iraq, and we ought to be able to go to Jerusalem and look for these Uthmanic manuscripts. And the way Muslims take the Quran, they take the Quran as an almighty book, and there's so much treasure that even if I, as a Christian, if I should publicly burn the Quran, if Muslims are there, they will burn me. I will be burnt or killed for burning the Quran. So that you will know how Muslims cherish the Quran. So which means that we expect that same thing from those people in the 7th century. So they would actually have to keep it very, very well and keep it in a safe place, so that this is the Quran, not just another Quran, but a Quran that was sent by that was sent down by the third caliph, Uthman. So it will be cherished, and we should see it perfectly preserved. I mean, the text, I mean, the body and everything. But guess what? Even till date, we are yet to see an Uthmanic Quran, and you can see Dr. Ekmeledin confirming that we do not have any Uthmanic Quran. So when Muslims are telling you there's no single Uthmanic Quran is in existence, so I just had to give you that history. So we know what to expect. So you can scroll up ETM. Now look at what Dr. Tayatikulu said. He said, no serious scholarly work has been done on them. This must have date from the early mid-8th century. They are not Ottomanic, nor copies sent by him. This Dr. Atkul is talking about the Topkapi. He said there are no serious scholarly work that is being done on the Topkapi manuscripts as at that time, and this is not an automatic manuscript, and it was not one of the manuscripts that was sent by Uthman. And guess where what it was dated to? It was dated to the 8th century, not the 7th century. We know that Uthman manuscript was dated to the 7th century, and it would amaze you to know that there is no single Quran. I mean, there is no single Quranic manuscript that was dated to the 7th century. They are all 8th century. They are all 8th century upward. And if you want to go with carbon 14 dating of the manuscript, you cannot date a manuscript by carbon dating. The reason is because when you date a manuscript by carbon dating, what the manuscript will do, I mean, what dating will do is that it will only be able to tell the date when the animal was killed or when the animal died. So it cannot accurately tell you when exactly the writings of that on that manuscript or on that parchment was done. So carbon dating cannot give you an accurate date, and that's why when you look at the Quranic manuscripts that were used, that was done, that were carbon dated, you will see that most of them, all of them, not even most, all of them predated Islam and outdated Muhammad. These manuscripts, when you begin to see them, you see that some of them, like the Sana Ponenceps, was written in around, I think, 500 something AD. That when it was carbon dated, and then you want to ask yourself, was Muhammad born around 500 AD? And these things, you will get this kind of variance when you carry out carbon dating on the Quranic manuscript. So carbon dating is not the best form of this manuscript. The best you can go for is you would go for the polygraphy method and the orthography method. These are the best way of you getting a Quranic manuscript or ancient manuscripts at that. It will tell you the style of writing. So you can actually tell this kind of scribe, how many scribes write on that manuscript, because through the handwriting you can understand. Then the style of writing can tell you when it was dated, I mean when it was written. So these are the method that was used. So Dr. Tayatikulu, who happens to study the Topkapi manuscripts in Turkey, in Istanbul, who is also from Turkey, said the Quran, the Topkapi was dated to the mid-18th century, and it is not in any way Ottomanic at all. Let us continue. So now he said, now scroll up a little bit. So this is what it says again. Now look at Dr. Tayatikulu's conclusion. Can you scroll down a little bit? I want to bring out something there. Okay. Scroll down.
Let me know
Okay.
which part you want to see.
You've gone ahead. Just scroll up. I want to talk about the the part of where he was talking about the variance with the present carrying text.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
that's good. Now look at what Dr. Tax Chris said. The Topkapi manuscripts has lot of variances, not few, but many. What? But I thought the Quran is perfectly preserved. Why then should an earlier Quranic manuscript have variants? Yes. Now this is where it gets interesting. He said not one but many. Now Dr. Chris was on the variants. He said there are deviations from grammatical rules, that is Islam, and spelling mistake in the Mus'haf attributed to Caliphate man. Dr. Yatikurish later concludes that 2,270 instances were there in different where there is difference from or
Continental skeleton.
the 1924 from the third Mus'haf, that is where there is difference from the 1924 current, that is from the Topkapi, we have the skeletal, the consonantal differences that were even different with that of the 1924 current text. That's what it means. Said if we had that on our this was what so if we should have these kind of variances in our biblical text, Muslims are going to hit us raw. But now look at Dr. Tash says that we have over 200, we have about 2,270 variations of from the Topkapi. How differential it is to that of the 1924 current text is so different from it. So when you compare the Topkapi manuscripts and that of the 1924 current text together, you are going to find about 2,270 variations, and this is according to Tatikulish. But if you should ask Dr. Dan Brubaker, then Dan Brubaker tells you it's a lot more. So now this actually should give you a kind of should arouse a kind of a question within you, that if the earlier Quranic manuscript has these kind of variations with the 1934 current text, then why should Muslims still claim perfect preservation of the text? Now let's look at some of the examples. In Surah 14:38, from the Topkapi, Surah 14:38 says that you know that we conceal and what he revealed. In that of the current text, it says you know what we conceal and what we reveal. One is past tense, another is present tense. One is plural, another is singular. He revealed, we reveal. So can you see the differences from the Topkapi and that of the 1924 current text, which is the present day half text? So if the Quran was actually perfectly preserved, then the Topkapi and that of the present day current text shouldn't have any discrepancies at all. There should be word for word. It's the way Muslims see our this is what we Muslims believe. The Quran is word for word, dot for dot, letter for letter. But now we are looking at the word for word, letter for letter. We can't find any. Now in Surah 3:158 from the Topkapi manuscript, it says, "If you should die or be slain, you shall not be gathered." In Surah 3:158 from that same from the 1924 current text, the present Quranic text, it says, "If you should die or be slain before him, you shall undoubtedly be gathered." Now, isn't that a clear variation? One, he said, if you should die, you shall not be gathered. That is, if you should die, you will not be gathered. But he said, if you should die before him, you shall not be gathered. One says, if you should die, you will not be gathered. So it is an incomplete statement. The other says that if you should die before him, you will not even be gathered. So this is a clear theological variation. differences from the Topkapi and that of the 1934 Kyrene text. So you see this kind of variations. So, and according to Dr. Tartikulich, he said there are about 2,270 of those variations. And you want to ask yourself, is the Quran indeed perfectly preserved? And as we move on in this study, folks, this is what you get to understand. This is what you get to see. This is what you get to know. All of these manuscripts, they all falls in the 8th century, all. But what makes them different is the fact that they are all found, or they are all located in different countries. Like the Petropolitanos manuscript is located in France, the Maya manuscript is located in London, this Topkapi is located in Turkey, the Al-Uzaini manuscript is located in Egypt, the Birmingham folio is located in the UK, in Birmingham. The what else? So we have lots of them, but they are all 8th century, which means that they are all manuscripts that falls in the same time period. They are all 8th century. They all fall within the same time period. The only difference is that they are all from different locations. But the question is that why should there be a different Quran in the same time period in different locations if the Quran was actually perfectly preserved? Isn't this the same problem Uthman and Abu Bakr had in their time period that made them to standardize the Quran? Isn't this the same thing that they had that made them say, okay, isn't this the same problem that Uthman had and said, okay, bring the Quran, burn the rest of the Quran, let me standardize it. Now we are having that same problem in the 8th century. That even after Uthman has said to have standardized the Quran, yet we are having Quran in different locations saying different things in the same time period. And the funniest part is that none of these 6 earliest Quranic manuscripts agrees completely with one another. And they are all from the same time period. They are all written from the same time period. Isn't this alarming? Isn't this a big hole for you Muslims to think and say, look, this thing cannot possibly be said to be preserved? Because imagine in this period, we have Quran from Africa, from the UK, from London, and then from Asia in the same time period. Then this Quran, and then in our time period, then you are claiming one Quran, but yet this Quran does not agree completely with each other. That's number one. Number two, this Quran are not even complete. When you compare the 6 earliest Quranic manuscripts with today's 1924 Kyrene text, they are not complete. The 1924 Kyrene text is far much more comprehensive in chapters than that of any of the earliest Quranic manuscripts. The most that you can see that's so close is that of the Topkapi. The rest are not complete. And yet, Muslim will tell you the Quran has been preserved word for word, dot for dot. And yet, in the same time period, when we studied their manuscripts, we did not find any manuscripts agreeing completely with each other. Manuscripts is going against each other. The standard manuscripts does not agree with that of the Topkapi. The Topkapi does not agree with the Al-Uzaini manuscripts, and you begin to see different variations in the same time period, but in different locations. How would you say the Quran is perfectly preserved with all of this? So you cannot. The only way you would claim perfect preservation of the text of the Quran is for you to turn blind eyes to all these evidences and say, well, I'm going to take away these evidences and say, I'm just going to go with the words of Allah or with the normal word the normal anthem that we say in Islam. The Quran is word for word, dot for dot, perfectly preserved. But always putting, though I cannot explain it, though I cannot give evidence, but this is what you've been taught. if you've been taught, if there's no evidence for what you've been taught, then because even if you claim memorization that your Quran is memorized, that then while writing it down, it should still be the same with that of the 1924 Quran text. But it's not. Even while writing it down, the top copy, which is in Turkey, should align with that of the Mail, which is in London. Even if it proves that memorization is actually the best form of preservation, while writing it down, the top copy manuscript should not disagree with that of the Mail manuscript. The Mail should not disagree with that of the Haluzeni. So, but you see this kind of discrepancies even when they will say memorization is memorized. And yet, the what you memorize, when you're putting it down, when each of you put it down, you put down different accounts into a text, into documentation, and then you still have the F1 to claim memorization is a perfect form of preservation. The manuscript evidence is the most damaging evidence that shows that the Quran is not perfectly preserved in any way. Evidence has been presented to you. So, ETM, you can make your thoughts.
Yes, still in the process of learning to copy manuscripts. There is a lot of manuscripts to grasp, but I know that they're not the same. And understanding that there are 2,270 variants, that's beyond me. That's I would say that's near. If that's manuscript alone have these variations, I would say that that is almost the variants we have in the entire New Testament. Because in the entire New Testament, there's like 4,000 or over like 4,000 variants. And this manuscript alone almost reaches that level. That's pretty interesting. And we see that even in those Topkapi manuscripts that the verses are not the same. So we could see historically the Quran was not perfectly preserved as Muslim claims. So how did they even know that the Quran was perfectly preserved? Right? Uh, no, they've been taught by their sheikh. Their sheikh, their imams teach them that. So obviously they would assume that okay, the Quran is perfectly preserved. Not only perfectly preserved, but letter by letter, dot for dot. Well, in all these manuscripts, right? In all these manuscripts, why don't they are the same as the present day Quran? Before the 1924 Cairo edition, do we have consistent word for word, dot for dot, variant reading of the Quran you have today? Or Uthmanic Quran, Uthmanic manuscripts? Do we have that today? Or that's why even Uthman had to result in burning the manuscripts. The whole copies are the manuscript, the Musaf. And he take those copies and burn. If that is true, well, those were not really the Quran. What happened to the manuscript of Ubay ibn Ka'b or Abdullah bin Masud? What happened to these manuscripts? Where can we see the manuscript that they had when Muhammad said to learn the Quran from? So we see that there are a lot of rabbit hole. We don't need to try to use logic, but we can even use their sources, their scholars, even their present day scholars like Yasser Qadishi really admitting the fact that the Quran has variant reading. Is not perfectly preserved as Muslims want you to think. So that's what I'll say. Pretty interesting about those manuscripts.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke about the 2000 and 2270 variants, and yeah, how we are using complete because that's almost half of the variants we have in the New Testament. And these are not just variants, folks. Believe me, these are not just variants. They are variants that actually goes deep into changing even the theological meaning of the words. So it is not a kind of variance that you would say, oh, this is a variance, but it changes nothing. No, it changes a lot. It changes a lot because when you look at those variances, you begin to see that it has a lot to do with the Muslim core theological doctrine. Now, you would you will never find that kind of a thing with the Bible. And like I will tell you, one of the beauty about Christianity is this: we we did our homework, we did our homework, and thanks to those who came with those kind of criticism on Christianity, and trust me, these criticism were not brought up by Muslims. It was brought up by atheists, and they were saying, why should we trust the Bible? Why should we? Why should how do we know that the Bible, what the Bible was written, is true, and what all this kind of questions? So this this for a while pulled a lot of people out of Christianity in Europe. Okay, but this actually took the serious Christians to go back to work. We began digging, we began researching. We did not take offense at it, which is quite, because it's a valid question. Why should you believe what the Bible was written is true? Why should you say this was true? Why can we trust the Bible? So how do we know that Jesus Christ actually lived? How do you know that Peter, James, and John and all the rest, they were all apostles of Jesus Christ? How do you know that Paul was here? These are valid questions. So the Christian scholars began to work, and we begin to have our questions. The questions answered gradually. But when it comes to Islam, when you ask these kind of questions, even as a matter of fact, in Islam, you can't ask this kind of question, because once you ask this kind of question, I'm telling you, when you begin to probe and then you begin to ask kind of questions, you will see how poor Muslims have how poorly they've done on the manuscript. They've not done a kind of serious work on the manuscript. Just take a look at it. It took Dr. Dan Brubaker to be the one to come out and begin to show Muslims the variations, the intentional changes in the manuscripts of the Muslims, showing them. And yet this manuscript is in their custody. They had it in their custody, and yet they cannot do the serious work on it and say, okay, before we even shout and start claiming preservation without evidence, let's take a look at this and study it ourselves. But it took a Christian to go and study your text for you, and then it took. We are not the one that's not showing you. Look what you guys are claiming. You cannot claim this kind of thing. Look at the intentional changes from the manuscript that you claim is perfectly preserved, and all these we are written for memorization. And if you are claiming that memorization is a perfect form of preservation, then why should we have these kind of variations in a perfect form of preservation? So you cannot eat your cake and have it at the same time. So scholars will never agree, and that is why Isakadi will always tell you, you cannot, this kind of a thing, you cannot say it in the West, in the academia. Isakadi knows he can't say it. Shabi Ali knows he can't say it. The scholars knows that they can't say it. They can't say this kind of a thing within academical scholars and say, oh, the Quran is perfectly preserved. They can't, because they know that they will be schooled. But every time Dr. J. Smith debates Shabi Ali on the Quran and the Bible, Shabi Ali always gets flawed every time. Even if if my daughter should debate Jakadi and Shabi Ali on the Quran preservation, is going to flood them, because the evidences are so overwhelming that you cannot deny that this text is corrupted. You cannot deny that this text is not perfectly preserved. And for this man, or the Aladdin, you see, you can, though it's not going to come up, but you can see what he's saying. Everything he's saying, he cannot debunk any of what I'm saying, because evidence are there. He cannot debunk any of what I'm saying, because these are scholarly work. These are evidences. All he can say is to throw tantrum. He cannot say it. If he cannot say that these evidences are all lies, because these were all work done by their scholars. All he can do is to throw tantrum. Even their scholars like Isakadi, Shabi Ali, Isakadi are now beginning to change their position, because the embarrassment is too much. Because how can you claim a perfect preservation of a text, but yet you are looking at the manuscript yourself, and then you yourself, you know that this thing is not in any way correct. It's not in any way preserved. So they began to change it to, okay, all right, we have variations in it, but this variation changes nothing. But that itself is a big issue because the variations changes a lot. Because the variation changes a lot. Now you can see how they are now evolving in their theory. Very soon, probably the next crop of Muslims, the next thing they'll be saying is that, oh, the Quran is not perfectly preserved. I mean, it's perfectly preserved, but it has variations, but the variation changes nothing. So there probably the next crop of Muslims will now is that the Quran is not perfectly preserved. Once Muslims get to the conclusion that the Quran is not perfectly preserved, then they are already out of Islam because what they're actually saying is that Allah cannot be the true God because Allah fails in the responsibility of saying that He said He is going to preserve the Quran. So if the Quran is not preserved, it means that Allah is not Allah. Allah is not the true God. Allah cannot be. So that's why you see that Muslims will always fight with and to always keep the claim that the Quran is perfectly preserved because they know that if they say it is not perfectly preserved, it is tied to the omnipotency of Allah. It's tied to the words of Allah saying He is going to preserve the Quran. So the moment they say it is not perfectly preserved, then what they are saying is that the Quran is a lie. Allah is not powerful. Allah is not the true God because the true God cannot say a word that is not going to have the power to do it. So you would doubt how you see that they keep on saying the Quran is perfectly preserved, even in the face of the evidences. And even when you give them the evidences, they will not be able to say anything. But they'll still keep on saying the Quran is perfectly preserved because they would never want to commit shirk. So the moment they commit shirk, they're outside of Islam. So that's it. And again, before that's Aladdin for you. Aladdin had a discussion with 11 Apologetics last week. My English intonation with that of 11 Apologetics is the same thing. We are both from Africa. So you could communicate with him. But when it comes to a case or a subject he cannot defend, all of a sudden he would not be able to understand my language. But if it's something that he knows that he can defend or he thinks he can defend, he will understand my language. But if it's not a study or a subject that he can defend, the next thing is that he will say he does not understand my language. And yet, he that is speaking is an Arabian. I myself, his English is not as if it's pure English. His English is a diluted English, a crossbreed English. It is not so true. So his English is also a false English. So it will be difficult for you to understand. But you will never hear me saying, I don't understand what he's saying. I understand what he's saying, provided what you include in it is English. Even if it is not purely the way Woody speaks English, it's not the way Johnny Apologetics speaks his English, which are the pure English. But the way I agree, I'm not an English speaker, but I'm trying once in a while. But my English is people can understand it enough to know what I'm saying. So Aladdin is just saying this because he cannot defend the claim. I challenge him now. Come forth and tell me that everything I've said about your Quran, that your scholars have written, that I just presented, are all lies. And then bring the true evidences, and then tell me that Dr. Tarati Kulic, who is a scholar in Turkey, who happens to be the one that does this, and everything that I've said is not my word. It is from the word of Dr. Tarati Kulic. I'm only bringing the conclusion that a reasonable person can just bring out from it, because when you are telling me that this Quran, this manuscript is not the same with this, so I can just bring my conclusion out of it. But the words are scholarly works done by Dr. Tarati Kulic on the Topkapi Quranic manuscript, and I'm only saying what the man said. Then it is not left for Aladdin to say what his own scholar say is a lie. Then I will not tell you, if you are a more scholar than this man, then bring out your own evidence to prove that the Topkapi is actually preserved. Bring it out. Probably you have your own extra Topkapi in your own bedroom that you can bring out and show the world that, oh, my own Topkapi is different from that of the one that is in Istanbul in Turkey. You want to say something, Iwuji?
Man, it's just funny how you said it. If he can't defend the claim, he's gonna say he doesn't understand his English. Oh boy. Yeah. I don't understand his English sometimes as well. I don't understand your English, but I don't want to use that as an excuse. We try to understand your English, what you're saying, but we never complain. So it's not good to complain. Oh yeah, we cannot understand your English. Try to understand. Or if you want to understand, say what you said again. Can you explain? And then say it slowly. Okay. Yeah, you admit your English is bad, but we never said your English is bad. Do we ever say that? So yeah, I will rest my case, and you explained a lot. Even modern scholars like Yesikadi said about the variants. So Muslims should review. If Muslims gonna say that he's wrong, now what Muslims need to do then? What Muslims need to do? I know that they're gonna try to appeal to the Quran, Surah 15 verse 9, where Allah says He's gonna protect his words, or Surah 16 verse 115, or Surah 6 verse 115. None can change his words, or 18 verse 27. None can change his words. Prove to us historically the Quran you have today is dated back at the time of Muhammad. It's the same, letter for letter, word for word, dot for dot. If there is no variance, right? If there is no mistakes, show it to us. That's the point. If your own scholars, even up to this day, and historically admit in those variations, right? And Yasakadi cannot even tell the how to trace it back from Muhammad when he was being asked a question. If we have Musaf and we were to rewrite the Quran, would you do it? And he says, I cannot answer. So that just says a lot that the Quran is not perfectly preserved as Muslims claim. Okay, so I'll just rest my case for now, and I'll give it back to you, Christian apologetics.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. Yes, I think I remember that. Yes, that is true. That is true. When Yasakari said that he cannot understand this, I think it was in a discussion with this huge guy.
Muhammad Ijab.
So yes, Mohammed Hijab. So so he said that you cannot answer that, he cannot choose that. But guess what? What he cannot answer, and he is the best person in the is in the best position to answer that, but he cannot answer it. But guess what? We can answer it for our own Bible, because the enormous manuscripts we have says that this is not me speaking now. This is Dr. Daniel B. Wallace talking. He said because of the enormous manuscripts we have, he said the work is ongoing. That is going to return the Bible back to its autograph because of the enormous manuscripts. But the question is that, can you say that for the Quran? Actually, Mr. Kali has answered. He said, I cannot answer that. It's impossible. But yet, you would never see we Christians coming out and claim perfect preservation of the Bible, despite the fact that we have enormous manuscripts that the work are in place. More manuscripts have been discovered that we want to return back to the autograph of how the apostles wrote it because of the manuscripts. The work is still in place. Said, but presently, you can see at least it's about 95-90% accurate. 95%. And the variations that you are seeing changes nothing. The variations in the Bible changes nothing. Again, I repeat, the variations in the Bible changes. So when you are hearing about the 95 to 97%, it's not as if the changes, what the remaining 2 or 5% that the remaining is actually a huge variation that causes the Bible to be crippled or change the doctrines of the Trinity or any core doctrine of the Christian faith. No, at all. Any changes you see, any variations you see in the Bible changes nothing. So that's are the 3 and the 5% that is being referred to. So, but you cannot say that for the Quran. You can't. It's impossible. Academically, you cannot. But within the Ummah, they would say it is possible. And Zakari himself said that. He said as a Muslim that you would want to press forward. That once you press, you want to move back. You wouldn't want to press too much. He said, but in the academic work, he said there's nothing like restriction. They press and press and press and press. I mean, this was not his word, but it is similar to what it meant that when you begin to ask some questions about the Quran and then you do not understand, you can say Asknafurullah or Alhamdulillah, or you just use one Arabic language to cover the whole thing you don't understand and say Allah knows best or the Prophet knows best or whatever. He said, but in academia, it is not so. Academia does not know what, doesn't want to care. They do not respect the text the way you respect it. They will dig into it, and bring out what they need to bring out. And that is what has been done, and that is what Dr. Azikulish has done. And he knows that it's an academia, so he has to respect his field. And it proves that the Quran, the Topkapi manuscript, which is the earliest, one of the earliest Quranic manuscripts, and which is the best, the most popular. Topkapi is very popular, the best and the most popular. He's saying that because it's, I think it's about 70 something percent complete. When you compare it with 1994 Korean text, that's how complete the Topkapi is. It is not fully complete, okay, and it is not perfectly preserved. So if the text, if Topkapi is not preserved and none of the 6 LS manuscripts is preserved, then the question is that how did they get the 1924 Korean text? Which manuscript was used? I'm still asking that question. I'm here to see a Muslim to answer that question. Uji.
Yep, you nailed it. And I would say that what you said everything. And Muslims after this day find it difficult to respond. So still looking forward to see Muslims try to come and respond apart from Al-Din. But let's see if some Muslims can prove that it traces back to Muhammad as they were claiming.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt anyone could. I doubt anyone could. I doubt anyone could. It's a difficult book. When you make claims like this, you can make such claim in the absence of evidence. But in the presence of evidence, you can't make such a claim and go scot free with it. It will really expose Islam. It only exposes Islam the more. It only exposes Islam the more. You can. Yes. And like Dr. Jesus will say, thank God we don't have this kind of problem with the Bible. If imagine just the little variations that changes nothing we have in the Bible.
Yeah.
Can you see how Muslims are stretching it?
Absolutely. Or if we find Christians that's burning the Quran like Uthman, a lot of Muslims will use that against Christians. Oh, you have Christians burning the Bible, the manuscript, because they did not agree, fighting each other, killing each other over a manuscript. That same exact thing happened in the Muslim sources, but they're gonna still try to explain it away. Like, how ironic.
Oh, that's it.
So.
And you know, Muslim the way Muslim knows how to settle among themselves is to fight. The Muslim have to kill themselves to settle the agreements.
Imagine the church fathers. Imagine the church fathers, one of them like the Tullian, finding the manuscripts that was updated by Justin Martyr or Erroneous or Ignatius, who was the eyewitness of the disciples, right? Let's just say,
yeah,
disciple of John or Paul. Ignatius was disciple of Peter, Paul, John. Irenaeus was disciple of Polycarp. Polycarp was disciple of John. And then these guys who learned by these men compiled the manuscripts. And now when later on people like Tertullian comes and saw these manuscripts, which he disagreed with, which is a problem, he commended his companions to take all these manuscripts and say, you know what, we're just going to standardize into one. Take all these manuscripts and just burn them. And then now he is fighting other Christians who disagree with him to get rid of them. How do you think that's going to make us look when our history have that history? When our history have these things? Christians fighting over each other, Christians burning the Bible, and fighting each other over it because of a disagreement, changing the meaning. A lot of Muslims would say, you see, and now you want us to become a Christian when your own church fathers cannot even agree on how many chapters or books supposed to be in the Bible, and they burning for it, even though they had some disagreements. But guess what? In the church fathers, they had some disagreement whether Hebrew or Revelation is inspired. But guess what? They never fight each other for it. They was analyzing. They was they was analyzing to see if the book traced back to the apostles and was it approved by the apostles. That's why it was added in. Muslims, on the other hand, when they have disagreements on the manuscripts, Quran, they're fighting each other over it. And when they're burning without any other content and so on. And which history is bad? Our history and how they come together, unite to be able to preserve the manuscripts of the New Testament and translate it in different languages, and then they spread it out, and the scribes are translating it different languages despite of their mistakes and variants, or Muslims that take other variants and burn them. We Muslims don't have any clue what these variants are, what these variants consist of, what was in those variants, and all we have is the Uthmanic manuscripts, which he standardized, and even in those manuscripts, they still don't agree on the present day Quran. Which history you think is worse? Even though Muslims want to lie to say their Quran is perfectly preserved. Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I to close this out, I would have been probably a little bit lenient if the four men that were unpicked by Muhammad to be the best reciters of the Quran, if they were the one that Uthman commissioned the project to, and these four men come together, probably they disagree on the verses and the surahs and whatever, and they later come to a conclusion on, okay, let us do it this way. Okay, okay, we have disagreement. Okay, how do we resolve it? And they come to a level ground together and say, okay, let's resolve it this way, and they all agree. And then they put it that way. That would have still even be better. But when Uthman went ahead and sidelined all these four men, then go with men that were not handpicked to be the best by Muhammad himself, that's a great problem. That's a big problem. So, and then when these men finished writing it, their Quran was not in agreement with the best reciter. If not for Hasayuti, who actually wrote the hadith, we wouldn't know that Muhammad actually forced these men to give, I mean, Uthman forced these men to give up their codices of the Quran, their own codices of the Quran. And he was saying to Uthman, he said, look, before you were born, I'll be memorizing this Quran that you want to burn. And Uthman burned the Quran. That's why when Bukhari was reporting this, he said Uthman burnt fragments and whole copies of the Quran that were not in agreement with his own. So part of the ones he burnt were that of Ubay ibn Kab and Abdullah ibn Masud. We knew this because of Asayuti. If not for Asayuti, probably we would not have known that there were actually discrepancies amongst the best reciters of the Quran on how many surahs should be in it. But the standardization was, even to start with, was a wrong standardization, because you don't have your best people with you to put the project out. You burnt everyone that everything that actually disagree with yours, and then you said yours is the best, or is the one to be followed. All right, no problem. Even right after you did yours in the 7th century, now in the 8th century, we begin to have copies of the Quran that was spreading up from different part of the world, from in Egypt, in France, in London, in Turkey, and they are all written in the same time period, and yet you've standardized your Quran, and yet all these Quran from the 8th century were all different. It even shows that the standardization of Uthman was actually poorly done, because if it was actually done successfully, we should be having different different manuscripts in different locations, having contradicting each other and having variances and not agreeing with each other. It's a job poorly done, just like it's clear to everybody. Muhammad is the first prophet. The Quran is the first book, and so is Allah, the first God. So I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, PTM apologetics.
No, it's fine on my side. Praise the Lord for that. Jesus Lord, Christ is King, risen and risen indeed.
Yeah. Thank you, folks, for joining us so far. I think the Lord Jesus will be coming next week, isn't it? If I'm correct.
Jay Smith, yes, hopefully next week.
Yeah. Okay, hopefully. So hopefully we're having Dr. J Smith next week to give us a session on. I mean, the Dr. J is well versed when it comes to the chronic manuscripts. That is his expertise. So we will be having him live on here. So we'll be taking a deep look at, was it not, is it not the Samarkand manuscript we'll be looking at also? Yes, the Samarkand or the, no, I think the Mahil manuscript. One of the two. That's what those editions will be looking at next week. The slides, I mean, the live has been scheduled. You can go check it out. So for you too. So next week, guys, for myself, Young Christian Thoughts, Young Johnny Apologetics rather, eating Apologetics and Raise the Reason. Say bye bye and God bless you. Keep asking in the grace of God and in the God of grace. Christ is King.